people, they've exoticized the foreign alim.
Fetishized.
They have, with utmost respect, they have. A famous masjid in England, I'm not going to mention any names, but they invited one of the top-notch muftis and sheikhs of Saudi, and to give a basic class on the fiqh of the Hanbali madhab, tahara and whatnot. And they invited a graduate of Medina, master's graduate, one of your British, to translate this basic class. And my jaw just dropped. Like, why did you study 10 years in Medina? Just to be a translator for somebody in a basic Hanbali text?
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to this special episode of the Islam Toleration Unscripted podcast with myself, Salman Umar, and my co-host
Umar Suleiman.
Today we have a special guest who's coming to interview us. His name is Sheikh
Yasir Qadhi.
Dr. Yasir Qadhi, mashallah. Welcome. Assalamu alaikum. You can give Umar a wireless
long distance, Wi-Fi, yeah.
MashaAllah.
Sheikh Yasir Qadhi is in town for the Mend event, is that right?
I'm trying to mend things, yes.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. He's coming to UK to see what, a superior kind of level of dawah really looks like.
No, actually it's the fish and chips, but anyway.
Okay.
Oh, mashallah.
To get you kind of warmed up, Umar has got a little experiment here. Didn't tell you about this before.
It's more of a quick fire question round. Just say whichever one comes to mind out of the options that I give you, yeah, Sheikh?
Okay.
Hey, bismillah.
And you won't be legally held to any...
Okay.
Tea or coffee?
Both.
Ooh. Is that
All right. When it comes to tea, English or Desi?
English.
Cappuccino or latte?
Neither. Americano.
Mashallah, that's a very good choice. Black or white?
It depends on my mood, but usually black.
Mashallah, you just gone up in my estimation, Sheikh. Hazelnut or pistachio?
Neither. Sorry.
What's your favourite?
Cashews.
Oh, not even nuts. This is a gelato question. Cashews, yeah? All right. Cambridge or Yale?
Obviously, Yale.
It's going to sell well. Medina or Azhar?
What was that buzzer?
Medina or Azhar?
I didn't hear anything.
It's obviously Medina. Again, it's like...
Mashallah. Man United, Liverpool. Think very carefully, Sheikh. You've got to answer one. Man United or Liverpool?
I have no clue what you're talking about.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, astaghfirullah. Mandi or biryani?
Mandi. Depends, bro. I'm sorry. You're asking really difficult questions, really. Right now, Mandi, but maybe by tonight it'll be biryani.
All right.
Your heart.
Exactly. Yes.
Mandi before even thinking that says something.
Yeah.
Apple or Android?
Apple.
Oreo or Jaffa cakes?
So what's a Jaffa cake?
Neither, bro. Really, no. It's just not my style. You're this too British for me.
Oreo's not British.
Okay, Oreo's Nabisco, yeah, but...
Well, I was going to say custard creams or bourbon creams, but we thought we would try and make it
bourbon, really?
Yeah.
Okay, is that halal bourbon?
The creams are.
I think bourbon is a drink.
Yes.
Is it? Yes. I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know, okay. But he knew the bong's pretty good. Okay.
What's a bong?
All right. Burgers or shawarma?
Say what again?
Burgers or shawarma?
Oh, you see your accent. I thought you said beggars or shawarma. Like, what? Where is the contrast between beggars and shawarma?
There may be a very strong connection.
I was like...
The subconscious is coming out this year.
The same as mandi and biryani. It depends on my mood. I love burgers. I love shawarma.
That's a very nuanced answer, mashallah.
I have my foot in both worlds, and there is no partisanship, right? We have been warned against partisanship for many years. I'm sorry.
Verily we have.
I was just talking about food. You guys have gone to another level. But yeah, mashallah. All right. Still or sparkling?
Still.
Saudi or Qatar?
Where are the cricket's noise when I need them? I would like to perform Umrah.
Yeah, mashallah.
I would also like to get a visa and walk out of the embassy as well.
I don't want to go to jail.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Apple pie or baklava?
Apple pie. That's very clear. Sweets, no question. The Western world wins.
Do you perceive a bit of an ulterior motive and agenda behind Umar's questioning?
Yes, I do.
American chocolate or British chocolate?
Neither. Belgium and Swiss.
Nice. Which is kind of close
British,
to us.
Yes,
yeah.
What? Excuse me?
Yeah, it is.
Cadbury's versus Godiva or Lindt or anything. No way. It doesn't work that way.
The same.
On this scale, American chocolate is like...
Hershey's.
Yeah.
I agree with that, actually.
Good, alhamdulillah. Local moon sighting or global?
Calculations.
Astaghfirullah.
Am I going to walk out of the set now? Is that khalas beyond the barrier?
No, alhamdulillah. Ibn Taymiyyah or Imam Ghazali?
That's the easy one.
No, it's not actually. They are both a part of our heritage. I personally have more experience reading Ibn Taymiyyah, but the both of them are what make Islam what Islam is in terms of its heritage. You cannot choose one over the other, or else you have a very, very different. Even Ibn Taymiyyah wouldn't be Ibn Taymiyyah if there hadn't been a Ghazali that he had to refute.
Yeah,
so
Umar.
even Ibn
What's wrong
Taymiyyah
with you?
is Ibn Taymiyyah because of people like Al-Razi and Al-Ghazali. So this heritage of Islam is too rich for us to choose in this manner. But me personally, I have spent more of my life reading Ibn Taymiyyah and writing on Ibn Taymiyyah. But that doesn't mean that is because Al-Ghazali is not a figure that is worthy of also respect and study.
MashaAllah. And the most important question, I saved it for last. Coke or Pepsi?
A'udhu billah.
Ibla Cola.
Neither. Do you still drink that stuff here? A'udhu billah.
Astaghfirullah.
I saw it in a museum. I
Yes.
don't know.
Evoca Cola with a little bit of black seed
the one.
oil.
Yeah.
Water
Sunnat.
or fresh juice. Or mango shake or this mango lassi, that's fine.
Oh, mashallah.
I have stopped
Mojito?
Mojito.
Mojito.
I have tried my
Not
best
when
to stop
driving.
drinking fizzies.
Good, mashallah.
Mashallah.
But you have a sparkling personality, so it makes up for it.
Jazakallah khair.
Barakallah feek. Jazakallah Sheikh. I thought just nice quick fire round, kind of let us into your psyche when you're put on the spot. I think it's a very much
Thanks
American.
for coming.
Yeah.
Do you have any
Alhamdulillah.
questions for us now?
Yes, I was talking about the joke of career that you have. That's okay.
Okay, no. You're moving on swiftly. So I was going to do another kind of activity, but I thought might be too kind of risque, might be a bit offensive, and I will show you pictures of Sheikh Yasir Qadhi at different points of his life and play Guess the Year.
Guess the year. That's pretty easy for me, actually. I know. You just look at the
Beard
size of the
length
beard and other things of that
Mashallah.
nature. Alhamdulillah.
But I mean, you have kind of publicly, somewhat publicly, had a kind of shift in some of your thinking. You know,
some of my thinking.
Yeah, I mean, many people don't know, but Sheikh Yasir Qadhi used to be on Windows, right?
Yes.
And then you made quite a public
Tawbah.
kind of tawbah, and
Yep.
you were guided to
Yep.
Apple. Can you tell us about that?
It was a phenomenal shift of my life.
Paradigm shift.
Paradigm
Yeah.
shift completely. It was a systems operation shift, the whole paradigm. I was exposed to a mystical version of operations. And initially I rejected any such claims of another mystical world. The world that had been born into was a pretty straightforward one, clicks and whatnot.
Just
But
black and white.
black and white, simple stuff, yeah. And slowly but surely, my friends began converting to a more spiritual understanding of that world. And I kept on denying the inevitable, trying to make sure that I don't fall prey to the suspicions of another camp. But eventually, I immersed myself in another world and I tasted the sweetness of a completely different mystical paradigm that cannot be expressed in words. It's just an experience. And
I agree. I had a similar kind of transition myself. But
Alhamdulillah.
some people accuse us of just following our desires. you
That
know,
is true,
because-
but they haven't experienced what we have
Yeah,
experienced.
that's the dhawq. for you,
Exactly,
You know, that's,
yeah.
that's having the
It takes
taste.
a
having
while for the kashf
experiential-
to come. Until the kashf comes, there's no hope.
Yeah, subhanAllah. SubhanAllah. This podcast was not sponsored by Apple,
Yeah.
but if you'd like to sponsor
Are you
us,
speaking about Apple? I got lost in the spiritual
he
journey.
was talking about. He thought he was talking about Unix or something.
No, Unix. We don't do Unix, bro. No.
I mean, Linux.
There is
Linux.
there is no monasticism.
Yeah.
No.
Just cut that out.
Yeah, cut it out. Very good. Pun intended, Salman. Okay. God, your minds, astaghfirullah.
I don't know what you're talking about. I was saying UNIX. Yeah.
Yeah,
bet you are.
Alhamdulillah. You also had another kind of change in some of your positions, or something less kind of public, maybe, and that is your shift from kind of Medina University life to Yale.
Interesting how you phrased that shift.
I mean, you've had a few shifts, right?
I
Not
see you're
just in
avoiding
kind of-
some keywords here.
Yeah.
Is that done on purpose? I don't know. Are there some
not just kind
taboo
of,
topics?
We don't want to put words in your mouth.
yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to be
Yeah.
facetious or superficial or funny or
We
serious?
like all of those.
You like
words
all
that we
of the
know
above.
that we totally know the meanings of.
Yeah. All of the above.
Very well. Okay. I believe that the more that a person studies and the more that a person grows, inevitably they change their positions. I believe that to remain stagnated on the same views you had when you're 20, even if you reach the age of 40, 50, or 60, it really shows that you have not been studying. And the person of truth is always willing to accept the truth wherever it comes from and whatever time of his or her life it comes in. And I have no qualms stating that in the last 25 years of studying Islam, alhamdulillah, I have been through many different phases, and I do not regret any of those phases, because I wouldn't be who I am had I not gone through those phases. I have no regrets of the previous commitments I've held, and inshallah I can honestly say that at every phase of my life I was sincere in wanting the truth. And I hope that inshallah that is demonstrated in my books and speeches throughout my life, that at whatever convictions I held them sincerely at that time. And I expect myself to continue to grow. It is arrogance for me to assume, and I'm still in my early 40s, it is arrogance to assume that, khalas, I will never change until I'm 60, 70 years old. No, people change, views change, ideas change. What you think is rajih, marjuh changes, your own research and your own experience. And I have a phrase that I've said many, many times, and that is, experience teaches us what books do not. And lived realities are different than booked realities. So a person who lives through life and who sees the impact of certain ideas and fatwas and trends of Islam, so a person who sees the impact of certain fatwas and ideas and trends is not the same as the one who is sitting in a room and just reading and reading and reading. And I think this is one of the fundamental differences between a true researcher who wants to know the truth in its applied reality versus a theoretical researcher who's simply just thinking in abstract concepts.
This is actually quite an important question. I think, I'm glad that you mentioned it, Sheikh, because I was going to ask you this. Would you say from your early positions after graduating from Medina and you coming back to the West, that you've learnt more or experienced more or been exposed to more, or a combination of all of the above, which has allowed you to apply what you knew or what you'd studied in a different way? Or have you actually learnt something that, in some ways, for want of a better term, abrogates what you studied before?
No, it's not an abrogation. It's a very deep concept, and I seek Allah's refuge from trying to sound elitist or whatnot, because that is an accusation that I do understand. It comes the best way.
We get that a lot.
Yes, I understand. The best way that I can phrase this for those of you who studied physics is Newtonian physics versus Einsteinian physics. This is the best way that I can phrase it. Okay. That Newton's understanding of physics was great for its time. It was valid. It was applicable. But when Einstein comes along, he demonstrates that Newtonian physics only operates within a time and a frame and a space. And if you were to extrapolate to another dimension, pun intended with Einstein, you understand that Newtonian physics, while it's not wrong, it's also not fully right. Yeah. And you really need to understand Einsteinian physics to really understand what I'm saying about Newtonian physics. And it's difficult to explain to somebody still in doing GCSEs or whatnot, all of these different levels, right? You need to study for yourself and go beyond yourself. So there's no denying that the knowledge that I've been exposed to is of a different type. It's more, I call it it's an usul of knowledge. It's epistemology. Yeah. What we study in the West is not what we study in the East. You know, there's no. I quoted this anecdote, an incident in my own life many times. One of the classes I took at Yale, it was just my professor and me and one other student, 3 people in the whole graduate level class, and the entire semester was Fakhruddin al-Razi. That was the course called Fakhruddin al-Razi, his lifetimes in theology, right? I remember, never forget this. It was just me, my friend, and the teacher. Walks into class, we're in the library because the class took place in the library, and he said, look, I have no idea about Fakhruddin al-Razi. You, Yasir, probably know more about Razi than I do. But we will now study how to study Razi. Okay. That blew me away. And for the rest of the semester, my jaw just continued to drop because he was right. He hadn't studied Razi the way that the books that I read not. But every week we did a different facet and we studied how to study. and all of us would do our research every week and come and present our findings, he would become a student in the class. All three of us are coming, okay, so let's do the biography. First question, where do we get his biography from? And what are the biases of each biographer? And which era is each biographer writing in? And where did the biographer get the information about Al-Razi? So all of a sudden you go to a different paradigm. It's no longer you just open up, Al-Dhahabi or Ibn Kathir, but no, Al-Dhahabi, with utmost respect to him, is coming from a different paradigm than Al-Razi. And whether you like it or not, there are biases sometimes that are pronounced, sometimes there aren't. My point is, these types of stuff, when you go over it for years and years and years, you start rethinking through a lot of what you have been taught and studied. So it's not a question of right and wrong, really. That's a very two-dimensional way of looking at it, really. It's a question of nuances. It's a question of exploring more. And because of this, I mean, my position now is something that I do understand. Those still in Newtonian physics would really just automatically dismiss because it's too mythological, Einsteinian physics, let's say. But with my utmost respect, I believe that these creeds that we are wed to also have elements of human products in them. And just like most Salafis, I said the word, just like most Salafis fully understand that the madhabs of fiqh are human developments, right? That the Prophet ﷺ was not Hanafi or Shafi'i or Maliki or Hanbali or Zahiri, that the Prophet ﷺ is above any of these strands. And these strands are trying to extrapolate the divine Sharia. And all of them are essentially human products attempting to get to the divine truth, right? I say with my utmost humility and respect, and I know this is not the time to go into detail, but frankly, the Sunni theological schools are very much akin to these legal schools. The Prophet ﷺ did not come with Aqidah Tahawiyya, nor did he come with Kitab al-Tawheed, nor did he come with al-Bayjuri, nor did he come with this or that, or Asas al-Taqdis. He didn't come with any of these specific strands. Each one of these strands is attempting in their best efforts to try to get at something which is the truth with a capital T. And we need to understand that they are human attempts to get at the truth. So I don't, just like most Salafis don't like being classified as a particular madhab, I no longer view myself as being pigeonholed in a particular theological strand. Yes, I studied Athari Creed inside out. Yes, I knew the theology of Ibn Abdul Wahhab, better than any other strands. And I wrote and I published books in that strand. And for many, many years of my life, I considered myself to be a part of that Athari strand. But just like with Newtonian and Einsteinian, you kind of move beyond. I've never said I've rejected. I've never said I've gone against. It's a matter of you humanize and you understand. You see the development of theology. Yeah. And I've tried to express this before in terminologies and ways that got me into a lot of trouble. You remember that, But once people calm down, I still stand by that example, even if the wording wasn't conveyed properly to the people. I still stand by the example that the iman of the earliest generations was far better than ours, even though our grasp of our versions of theology, right? Again, the questions that we would have been asked in Medina or Azhar or any institute, right? The fact of the matter is the questions themselves would never have been formulated by the Sahaba, much less answered by them.
Because it's been synthesized into a field of study.
So what exactly then is Iman and Aqidah when we know that the Sahaba's Iman was infinitely more than ours? And yet, when it comes to regurgitating quote-unquote facts of Aqidah, perhaps later generations think they have more of a factual, checklist, right? You understand what I'm saying about this, right? So this is, again, the what I'm trying to express in a way that is just the beginnings of a much more detailed discussion.
Don't you think that perhaps some of your the change that you experienced in your thinking could have been because of your starting point as very strict kind of Aqidah-centric study?
That is also possible, yes.
Because, I mean, Aqidah in general, the way it's taught and studied from different schools of thought, it's taught as something black and white, something...
And every school teaches this. And every school is incorrect in this regard. Because Aqidah is a development. And this is, again, something that
or rather the study of Aqidah, the science of Aqidah, rather than...
The science of Aqidah is a development.
The core subject that they're trying to
And
study.
all you need to do is to look at the various theologians of every school that have come. And you see for yourself that there is an actual internal development. And many of you know this, that Ibn Taymiyyah some of his greatest criticisms came from his fellow Hanbalis, who could not fathom and understand what is this guy doing to our traditional Islam, to our quote-unquote orthodox Islam. They viewed Ibn Taymiyyah as having rocked the boat. It only took a century or so before Ibn Taymiyyah becomes the boat. And now when somebody else comes along and says, well, okay, Ibn Taymiyyah might be great, but all of a sudden, who are you to rock the boat? The same. It's like the same cycle continues throughout history. And khair, I mean, again, my position has also been, and I hope this is clear as well, I don't really concern myself with critics too much, and that's for many reasons. Of them is that, generally speaking, those who criticize are already coming from a level of practicing Islam that inshallah makes them safe on Judgment Day. They're praying, they're trying to avoid the major sins, they're following Allah and loving the Messenger and following the Sunnah. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Then their criticism of me will neither harm nor benefit me or them on Judgment Day. Allah is the judge. We have to look at the broader world, what is happening. And I have to say this bluntly. Anybody who is still stuck in a mindset of trying to divide practicing Muslims and trying to disunite people that are coming to the masajid and loving Allah and reading the Quran, anybody who's still so sectarian minded in our modern context of the rise of Islamophobia and the rise of the far right and the complete disaster of what is happening in the world today, country after country, we are literally being threatened. Our existence is now being challenged. And if people are still in the 80s and 90s type of mentality of, oh, this guy's Sufi, this guy's Ash'ari, this guy's Salafi, this guy's Deobandi, and they're trying to disunite people who overall love Allah and His Messenger, honestly, with my utmost respect, I think that is a mindset that there is no hope to get across to at this stage, and let them do what they are doing. We have to look at the global world. And alhamdulillah, the vast majority of Muslims are not in that narrow mindset. And so we need to concentrate on those that are far from the deen, those that are not even coming to the masajid, those that have huge misunderstandings, those that are semi-practicing. The world is fertile. Why are we worried about the 2% that are ultra-religious, and then within that 2% we're dividing, where do you pray, and is it Imam Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i, is it Ghazali or Ibn Taymiyyah? This is foolishness. Wallahi, it is foolishness.
Many people speak about post-madhabism and that kind of stuff. What now, right? Would you agree that the whole idea of Aqidah as a study needs to be rehashed and the boundaries need to be redrawn?
Again, these are things that, subhanAllah, it's so easy to take a 2-second clip and go to your sheikh in Timbuktu and get a fatwa against the person. We've done this, been there, done that. And I don't know what to do with that. Let whoever wants to do that, do that. In the end of the day, and I've said this at a conference in America with a bunch of clerics in Medina and Azhar, whatnot. I said, look, you guys can continue fighting over the Mawlid Sunnah or Bid'ah, over the Taraweeh 8 or 20. As you're fighting over whether, Allah Azza wa Jal ziyad is haqiqi or majazi, your children are fighting over whether God exists or not. Yes. As you're fighting over whether the Mawlid is Sunnah or Bid'ah, your children are debating whether the Prophet should even be followed. What is the role of a Prophet? Like, what world are you living in where you have to regurgitate? And I have to be frank here, and I was guilty of this 15 years ago. In order for these debates to continue, every side has to regurgitate that which is unknown to the next generation. They have to teach their people controversies of 1,000 years ago. The average Muslim of our times is unaware of these controversies until they are taught it. Our controversies are far different and bigger. They are New Age atheism. It's the issues of modernity, of liberalism, of secularism, of human rights, of democracy, of feminism. These are the shubuhat. These are the things our young minds that are going to university are coming to us and asking about. And instead of telling them what Islam tells us about these big issues, instead we take them back 1,200 years and we bring up obscure topics, the Quran being this or that, and Kalam Allah, this and that. People don't even know until we teach them what the various schools have thought. Isn't this something that is counterproductive? Final point before I give it back to you. Ibn Taymiyyah was a genius. He is somebody truly I admire as an intellectual. And I firmly believe if Ibn Taymiyyah had been alive today, right, what was he writing back then? Al-Hamawiyya, the questions from Hama. Al-Wasitiyya, the questions from... Let me repeat that. Al-Hamawiyya, the questions from Hama. Al-Wasitiyya, the questions from Wasit, right? Al-Tadmuriyya, the questions from Tadmur. What were those questions, the problems of their time and era, which were about Asma wa Sifat, Mu'tazilite doctrines,
Qadar.
Greek Qadar. Okay, if Ibn Taymiyyah were alive today, he would be writing Al-Londoniyya, right? Al-Birminghamawiyya, a New
Sharqiyya.
Yorkiyya. What would those questions be? Would they be about Asma wa Sifat, or would they be about liberalism and secularism and democracy and feminism and living in the
paying
modern,
taxes.
all of these various modern questions, and that is is a very factual question. Yeah. These are the questions. So my problem with the followers of Ghazali and Ibn Taymiyyah is that they put these two on such a high pedestal that they just read their works and stop there. And instead of just reading their works, why don't they try to actually do what Imam al-Ghazali or Ibn Taymiyyah did of their time frames? You never find that mindset. You still have the same tit for tat back and forth that took place 1,000 years ago. And you know what? Maybe if I were alive 1,000 years ago, I would have done that as well, because those were the questions of that era. But they are no longer the questions of our era. So it is a huge mistake, a fundamental mistake, where you go back to these controversies and you resurrect the back and forth that took place in a time and a context that is absolutely and totally irrelevant to the world that we find ourselves in.
I mean, quite a senior da'i, he mentioned, I won't mention his name, he said the study of Aqidah as a science has become like an idol that's worshipped. It's a bit more.
Yeah, it's a bit of a, obviously terminology is meant to provoke your minds and to provoke a reaction. And if he means metaphorically an idol, that metaphorically, obviously it's not an actual idol
so
that is worshipped. A person's wala and bara, instead of being to Allah and His Messenger, has come to a bunch of texts written by men. This is what has happened with sectarianism within our ummah, and it is a problem that I ask Allah's refuge and forgiveness. I was also a part of the problem 15 years ago, where I was on a certain frame of mind, where I thought that somebody who is of a different sect within even Sunni Islam is a type of enemy to the truth.
Yep.
And that's a dangerous ideology and a dangerous mindset. That
Umar.
it's not going to help the ummah.
Told you so many times.
So Shaykh, here's a question, Alhamdulillah, in terms of what you've spoken about. The laity, the vast majority of Muslims we know are so distant and so removed from these type of discussions. This is a reality. When I work in the city and the type of questions people come and ask is so disconnected from these type of discussions that we're having now. Okay, so that's one, I think the majority of society that you're talking to. What advice would you give those people who want to become students of knowledge though? How do they develop themselves now? What do they study, right? As opposed to most people who are just taking knowledge from you. What do they study? How should they develop themselves?
Because they might think that you're attacking them, for
not even without the attacking.
reading,
I'm just saying general
stuff that they.
So the question then would be akin to how does one study fiqh? You have to start with a school. The purpose of these schools is to build you up and to give you an idea, but never substitute the school for the religion of Islam. Unfortunately, this is what sectarianism has done, where my school becomes the correct, quote-unquote, orthodox opinion of Islam, and anybody who dares disagree is somehow a partial enemy to the truth. And that basically means you look at him as somebody who has opposed the religion of Allah. That's where the danger comes. That's a very big danger. Of course, when you start studying Islam, you need to go to a school that's already been developed, whether it is the Shafi'i, Hanbali, Maliki. Choose a school to understand fiqh, and then choose a theological, madhab as well, whether it's Athari, whether it's Ash'ari, whether it's Maturidi. These are the main Sunni schools, and study them so that you get an idea of, okay, this is the mainstream understanding of Islam, and feel free to study more than one, and that will give you a deeper appreciation. And no problem if you ally yourself with one of these strands, because it makes life easier, right? We have all seen, all Salafis that are above the age of 35 have seen the problems of what happened in the 90s when we opposed the madhabs and we opened up the door for do-it-yourself Islam, right? We saw that was an extreme that led to another extreme. And I myself, again, we went through all of this as well. And alhamdulillah, though I wasn't a hardcore anti-madhabist, but as you know, that was a common strand in England, especially because of the type of Salafism that was introduced in England back in the early 90s. You understand the Jordanian strand of Salafism. Even Salafism, by the way, you see the human developments here. You see an understanding of human development. It has many strands. I gave a lecture in Georgetown recently about this, that even Salafism isn't just one strand, and every strand is claiming the other strand is wrong. This is just narrow-mindedness. These are all human attempts. Back to your question. Of course, you need to start with some school. Otherwise, you are reinventing the wheel. And that is nonsensical.
Yeah.
Once the building has been developed, right, you might as well take advantage of it and go as high as you can, even as you understand that the building is a human product. Allah didn't reveal the building, the Maliki madhab, the Shafi'i madhab. That's not, Allah didn't reveal that. But these are buildings that are attempting to get to the divine sharia. The same goes for the schools of theology. Take a school, study it, and then move on and be practical and pragmatic. Don't take other schools as enemies. And every person then needs to choose, what am I interested in doing? What is my goal in life? To what level am I going to commit to Islamic studies? Is it my full-time life, in which case I give up everything and go study and whatnot? Or is it just to be a better Muslim in my personal life? What level am I going to give da'wah to? What am I going to concentrate on? These are all questions that will then, based on those questions, the next steps will come about what they should be studying.
Yeah, and I guess taking the advice that you've just given, Sheikh, would you apply that to yourself? So if you were speaking to the younger Yasir Qadhi, would you say to him, in terms of all the experiences that you've had, they've made you who you are today? So looking at yourself, what would you have changed in terms of your journey? Or would you have said to yourself, don't do this, or maybe do this at this time to come to the position now?
See, this hypothetical question, I mean, I don't see much value in it. I am who I am. I went through the phases I did, and I don't regret any phase, like I said. And I'm thankful to Allah. I went through the College of Hadith and then the Dawah, theology speciality. And to me, that was an ideal combination, because the both of them are critical sciences. The both of them really demonstrate a level of complexity. Hadith teaches us how we get the knowledge that we get in our tradition from. Theology was taught to me in a very again, black and white fashion, that this is the haqq from Allah. And I thank Allah, I mastered that theology, and I read, for my master's dissertation is called Jahm ibn Safwan and the theological positions of Jahm ibn Safwan. For that, Jahm ibn Safwan is a very early figure. He died like 120 Hijrah, right? That's like before any of the major imams, right? In order to get his biography and his theology, I had to read, no exaggeration, hundreds of books written in early Islam. At the time, I read every book ever printed about Athari theology up until Ibn Taymiyyah. And then I read Ibn Taymiyyah. This 3 years, 4 years I'm doing this dissertation. That, I couldn't be who I am if I hadn't read through all of those hundreds of volumes. I don't regret it for a second. That to understand the development of theology, subhanAllah, I read it and I never thought about thinking of the chronological development. I'm reading it as if it is one. Ibn Qudama, Ibn Taymiyyah, you have al-Lalaka'i, you have al-Barbahari. I'm looking at it as if it's one. And then you get to Yale and they start telling you, well, hold on a sec. Each of these individuals is a different time, different place, different, look at what each one did that the other didn't do. Look at the context, look at the and you have all of this information, but now you re-sift in your own mind and you start moving. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. You have the pieces and your teachers have constructed a puzzle and they've said, here it is. And you don't question it because they're your teachers. But then you're like, hold on a sec, that doesn't fit here. This piece is kind of not, and you start redoing it in your own head, and the facts are the facts, but how you connect them and the broader picture that you form, that is something that requires your own independent research.
So how do you bridge the gap between that kind of aqidah / hadith centric way of looking at things and the perhaps more ethics based fiqh or kind of fatwa and research in that regard? So you're part of fatwa organizations and
the Fiqh Council of North America.
I mean, typically, the stereotype is that somebody who's really, really overly studies aqeedah and hadith, they're not going to be as nuanced or capable in the fiqh domain, right? Do you think that's a fair kind of...
all stereotypes, some say there's an element of truth in them and an element of falsehood in them. This is what some people say. That's a bit of a... That too is a stereotype in and of itself, right? The stereotypes are stereotypes.
Yeah, it's a meta-stereotype.
Exactly, mashallah.
So how did you bridge that?
I've always had a strong passion for many fields, alhamdulillah. Of them is Ulum al-Quran. And I have a book on Ulum al-Quran, and I've always had a passion. I still am involved in Ulum al-Quran in my discussions and whatnot. Of them is Seerah. And alhamdulillah, my Seerah shows again. Of them as well, I've always had a passion in the fiqh of ibadat and some aspects of muamalat. There's one field I'm not interested in all, that's money, business. I leave that to Umar in this. I just have very little desire for finance issues. It's just never intrigued me and whatnot. So Islamic finance, I'm not too big on that. But the fiqh of ibadat and some muamalat like nikah, talaq, whatnot, I've always had a passion. I've studied, alhamdulillah, quite a lot in these regards. And alhamdulillah, I was honored 2 years ago that the Fiqh Council of North America, which is the oldest and senior most Sharia body in North America, asked me to join them. And they actually said, we want somebody who has studied hadith, because we don't have somebody with a hadith background. So we are all a team that works together, and each one we have a finance guy who's a specialist in finance. He used to work in Islamic banks around the world. We have somebody who's a medical doctor, have somebody. So putting together, we come together as a team. And alhamdulillah, we have produced a number of fatwa, and my specialization is known, and we all have discussions about every fatwa that we give. We come together as a team and we discuss it, and each one brings a speciality out.
So who would you say are some of your inspirations in terms of alive today? Who do you go to for kind of advice and to keep yourself in check, because everyone needs
the main person whom I can say that I have the utmost respect for, who is still alive today, is Sheikh Salman Al-Auda. May Allah Azza wa Jal expedite his release. He has had a very profound and personal impact on me. I have met him many times, and he knows me personally, and he definitely has he's somebody that really, I get emotional even just talking about knowing what he's been through and what he's going through now. Is somebody that I genuinely love and admire, and I view him as being the Ibn Taymiyyah of our times. Wow. This is the Ibn Taymiyyah figure of our time, somebody who understands and who has been forward thinking for his entire life. Even as a graduate student, 25, 30 years ago, he was ahead of his time. And he too has been through phases, right? And I see this as well, like, okay, this is actually a good thing that you are exploring and you're seeing and you're trying to rethink through and do it in a manner that, yes, traditionalism is traditionalism, but traditionalism in Islam doesn't just mean you open up a fatwa of 1,000 years and implement it. You also have to move forward. So that is my number one inspiration, was alive. That's Sheikh Salman Al-Auda.
Historically, from even when you were, did you study with him when you were in Medina?
So I wasn't able to study with him per se, because he was in Buraida and I was in Medina. But I did visit him when it was not allowed to visit him. Those were taboo days, so
don't tell anyone.
Yeah. I won't tell anyone.
This is back in the late
Probably
90s or whatnot.
Now either.
But
unfortunately,
it's interesting.
In his house, I visited him in his house, and I also visited Sheikh Safar al-Hawali as well, and got to know him. And in fact, subhanAllah, again, this shows you how different these people were. When I when I first started thinking of going to America for a PhD, right? First, I started thinking going to America. And I would have been perhaps the first Westerner, definitely the first American or British, to get a PhD in any discipline of Islamic studies in any university in Saudi Arabia. I was at that stage. Nobody was ahead of me from America and England. Alhamdulillah, my grade speak. Everybody knows this. I'm not, astaghfirullah, bragging or boasting. Everybody knows this. I would have been the first, maybe Westerner, definitely American, British, Canadian, Australian, to get a PhD in any Islamic discipline, in any Islamic university in Saudi Arabia. I was set to be that. I have my master's. And towards the last year of my master's, 9/11 has happened 2-3 years before then. The world is changing dramatically. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do here for another 5-6 years? I need to go back and be with my people, the Muslims of the West. I need to do things for them. And I asked a number of my teachers, and down to a person, pretty much everybody said, are you out of your mind? Have you lost your marbles? You're going to go and study with the kuffars, right? You're going to go and study Islam with people that, and I remember, I'm not going to mention any names, but a very, very famous sheikh, you all know him, in Medina. He said to me, when I said, Sheikh, I'm thinking of applying for a PhD, doing a PhD on Ibn Taymiyyah, in the West. He just snorted. He goes, do you think they've even heard of Ibn Taymiyyah? Like, he had no idea that there are at least 500 books written on Ibn Taymiyyah in English and German and whatnot. Do you think you've even heard of Ibn Taymiyyah? He's like, he snorted at that. The one person, by the way, in Medina.
Sorry.
This is 2003.
So they didn't know Yahya Misho, people like that?
Nobody.
I thought he had a...
Nobody. This is a different world. And again, I love my mashayikh and whatnot, but it's a different mentality and world.
Yeah.
So the one person, by the way, in Medina who actually said, you need to go, right, was Sheikh Al-A'zami, though I gave an interview with him recently, if you saw my interview.
In Urdu?
Right?
That one?
Yes, that one.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes. Is it better than your Urdu, or are you going to make a comment? I'm just waiting. I don't know, man.
No, your Urdu is good.
You said Urdu with hesitation there.
Yeah, I know. It's like you're like in Urdu. You're like, okay, is there
in Urdu?
In Urdu. Okay. So Sheikh Al-A'zami was the first and only person in the University of Medina who said, "Don't even think of doing a PhD here. You have to go, outside." I was like, "What?" The one person, the Indian guy, is like, "What? To go outside?" But no. So then I went to Sheikh Safar Al-Hawali in Mecca, right? And he said, "Ya Yasir, it is wajib for you to go back to your people and to do a PhD there." I said, "Sheikh, I'm worried. I'm worried about myself, my iman. I'm worried that I'm going to be sitting in classrooms where perhaps things are said that are inappropriate. And, it's in the Quran that when Allah's name is mentioned and yustahza'u bihi fala taqdam." He said, "Ya Yasir, you are not sitting there just for fun. You're sitting there to understand their shubuhat so that you can then refute at a later stage. Of course you have to go." And he said a phrase I still remember, and his face changed. He goes, "Kam kunna natamanna an taliban mithlak ya'ti min baladi." How much we would have wished, or how long we yearned for a student like you to come to our lands, study with us, and then go back and study at the top institutions of the world and get his PhD from there. Like, he literally changed my paradigm. These are the mashayikh that I look up to, right? The forward thinkers. He said, "Don't even think about it. Go and study over there." Once he said that, my heart became at ease, and I prayed istikhara and I applied to, alhamdulillah, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and your university here, Oxford, whatnot. Of course, your Oxford accepted me, and it was Allah's blessing.
Was it for the PhD, or was it just
PhD? Yes, but I thank Allah that I chose my Yale University with utmost respect. And there are many reasons for that. I mean that semi-seriously. The manhaj is. The manhaj is very different over here and there.
Did you feel a little bit maybe upset that all these mashayikh that you respected so much were telling you to go back to your country?
On the contrary, all the mashayikh were saying to stay. What part did you not understand?
Ones you respected,
But this was actually the point I was going to say, was actually quite interesting, because people listen to your stuff or read your stuff, Sheikh. They may think that you have this, Western-centric form of Islam. But alhamdulillah, you've actually said that the people you most admire, who have guided you, that you refer to, are actually from the East, in that sense. What I'm saying is people may think that suddenly you've shifted everything to the West.
Okay, let me go a little bit further, though, and say that exactly. You open this door.
Here's the rope.
You open that door.
Cut this bit out. Yeah.
I think, especially Muslims in England, more so than America, they have been taught and fed for too long to idealize, perhaps even idolize.
Astaghfirullah.
The term idolize doesn't mean to make into an idol, right, Mr. Salman, or Dr. Salman.
Yes, thank you.
People, they've exoticized the foreign alim.
Fetishized.
They have, with utmost respect, they have. And I mean, a famous masjid in England, I'm not going to mention any names, but they invited one of the top-notch muftis and sheikhs of Saudi, and to give a basic class on the fiqh of the Hanbali madhab, tahara and whatnot. And they invited a graduate of Medina, master's graduate, one of your British, to translate this basic class. And my jaw just dropped. Like, why did you study 10 years in Medina? Just to be a translator for somebody in a basic Hanbali text? And half the audience is asleep because when you translate terms, they're not paying attention. Like, this is a mindset that is a problem. If we just wanted to be a translators, we should have gone for 1 year, done the Doora in Arabic, and then come back and get the phone numbers of the kibar and call them. The purpose of getting trained is to then become independent, go back and then look at what needs to be done. We all quote Ibn al-Qayyim when he says, half of fiqh is understanding the context of your people. Half of the fatwa is to know the context of the fatwa you're giving in. I met another person in jail now, Sheikh Abdul Aziz.
There's been half the people, man.
I know, it's like...
I'm detecting a pattern here.
Wallah, if you're going to support regimes, that's also another problem. So anyway, I met Sheikh Abdul Aziz Al-Fawzan, very, very dynamic sheikh and alim. And he had lived in America for 5 years before 9/11. And because of 9/11, then he left and he came back. And definitely one of the up-and-coming next generation of senior ulama of that region. And this is the first year after I graduated from Medina. I met him in London, actually. Yeah. And I said, Sheikh, coming back to America now, and I'm seeing so many of the fatwas and fiqh that I held as being completely haqq. Now I understand you cannot apply that anymore. And I'm changing so much because I see the context of my people. And he said, Haqq, Ya Yasir, how true is this, Ya Yasir? I spent 5 years in America, and every year, he told me this, one-on-one, every year I kept on changing my fatwas until I couldn't even recognize myself from 5 years ago. Seeing the impact, you give a hardcore fatwa, and you see, not only does nobody listen to it, it turns people away from Islam. And then you realize there's another opinion that actually makes sense, etc., etc. You learn from experience what you don't learn from books. I said, Sheikh, if this is you, 5 years, imagine a person born and raised in America, and he then sees all of these fatwa and he understands, look, this is not going to apply in my society. If living in 5 years changed you so much, you couldn't recognize your own self, then how about somebody, we have lived our whole lives in this country, and then we understand that this cannot be imported to our lives. So let me just finish this. And I said this in East London Masjid. Again, it went viral, that little clip. Go to your local ulama. Go to your local ulama. They didn't just study Arabic. They studied 5, 10, 15 years. That's the whole purpose of them going. They should be your primary reference. If they are stuck, they can go to the higher ups. They can escalate. But the average Muslim should go to the local sheikh or alim that he or she respects and looks up to, the one that is from the same culture, the same background, and who has studied, fiqh. This is a problem when somebody jumps the hierarchy, jumps the queue, and then calls up the kibar. We've seen this in the 90s, right? Yeah. We've seen how foolish it is, right? This little, neophyte, this completely, anyway, let me get too harsh over here. This diminutive, this diminutive.
The nicest thing you've been called.
I'll mention it. I've been called worse.
Calls up some sheikh far away, and then
what do you say about a person?
Yeah, what kada he said, and it's a problem for the sheikh.
Black jumpers, yeah.
Exactly, yes. These are called mock neck turtles. What do you call them? Anyway, so it's a problem for that sheikh. Yeah. It's a fitna for him, and it's a fitna for the caller. We've seen this.
Agree, sheikh. I was going to ask something that there's, and I actually agree with you. Growing up in the West, having access, mashallah, to the mashayikh, like yourself and the other mashayikh here. But and I give my example from the working world. We have this thing. I work in risk and audit, and so we always have this thing that the person who's involved in a process, the person who audits him has to be someone who's outside of that process. Where's the balance between living, experiencing Islam in the West, and then that our fatwa are based on that, versus someone who's looking outside and who isn't subject to the same experiences, having that level of
same pressures,
being able to remove
social pressures.
I don't think you can apply the audit example to fatwas and fiqh, and I'll tell you why.
Independence maybe is a better way.
Yeah, independence, that's different. I'll tell you why. Because the issue of masalih and mafasid, you know what that means?
Yes, yeah.
Cannot be conveyed in a paragraph phone call.
So benefit, if anyone listening, benefits.
The pros and cons, the harm and the benefits done by any... the classic example here, right, is politics. What to do with what's going on in this part of the world. Right. Okay. Do you really unthink that calling somebody in Timbuktu about which party to support, which candidate to do, how best to do your media operation, do you think that makes any sense? And by the way, for every strand of Islam, somehow miraculously the haqq and the kibar are always where that strand originated. Islam is not that regional, right? Islam is all not that regional.
Yeah.
For one strand, it's always Saudi Arabia. For another strand, it's always India or Pakistan. Like, come on, seriously? I mean, as if all of the major scholars of the world miraculously just happen to be in one small province of one kingdom or whatnot. Of course,
but surely that if that's a big kind of thinker, big alim, then he is going to know the limits of his own advice.
Easier said than done. And this is something that only those who have studied with mashayikh. And I said this to one of the students who literally said to me, do you know more than Ibn Uthaymeen? I said, it's not a matter of who knows more. I said, I have no doubt I love Ibn Uthaymeen more than you because I studied with him. He wrote a tazkiyah for me. I sat at his feet. He wrote a tazkiyah for me to get into Magister program. I know Ibn Uthaymeen better than you. I have no doubt that I love him a more proper love, because it is a love of a human to a human. You have a mythological idea of who Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah is, right? You have constructed a caricature. Because I know the Shaykh better than you, I can actually humanize him.
Yeah.
And I can see his strengths, and I also know other than his strengths.
There's always a danger of blurring the line between the fatwa. I mean, the fatwa, fair enough, and you need to be involved in the pros and cons. You need to see what the consequences are and so forth of the society you're living in. But sometimes fatwa, it kind of, because the fatwa is taking the theoretical and implementing
applying it
in
in a
real
particular
life.
Context. Yes.
Sometimes when somebody goes a bit too radical in the fatwas, you might say this about your own fatwas sometimes, that it's going against kind of the grain. Isn't there a danger of going into and changing the theory?
The checks and balances need to be as well from within. And that's why the safest way forward is that your own peers in your own lands, your own peers in your own lands, keep you in check. Okay? MashaAllah. You guys done?
That's it.
We're each other's peer.
You mentioned it earlier when you spoke about money and stuff. Alhamdulillah,
Alhamdulillah. So you give money in your bay'ahs or what?
Direct debit.
Okay, mashallah. You take money in your bay'ahs. Okay. Is it the money that's flowered on you or what?
I take Bitcoin as well now, Sheikh.
Mashallah, alhamdulillah. What's the price of Bitcoin, by the way?
It's not enough. We're waiting for it to go back up to 20,000.
Mashallah, alhamdulillah. The Fiqh Council just released a fatwa about Bitcoins. I actually wrote it.
Halal or haram?
Overall, it is halal.
Really?
I'm going to have to discuss that with you after, Sheikh.
Wow. So I'm already off the manhaj?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything else was acceptable.
Yeah,
This
you went too far.
Alhamdulillah.
But I mean, a lot of people, they say this about the American Muslims. We joked about in the beginning, but it seems from here, from our perspective, that American Muslims are under an intense amount of pressure politically with the rise of Trump. And
boy, I thought
Steve
we were
Bannon,
bad,
that
but you
kind of
guys are
stuff.
gonna have Boris. So subhanallah, I think we're
Boris
in a
is
better.
alright. His grandfather was a Muslim, isn't it?
Mashallah.
Shows what can happen in 2 generations.
I wonder what can happen. Yes. Okay.
But I mean, what's your kind of view, your reaction? I heard your lecture post-Trump kind of election, and it was kind of bleak, but you were giving an important message to the community. Did it turn out as bad as expected?
I will say that in every calamity, there's also a positive element that comes. Inna ma'al usri yusran, fa inna ma'al usri yusran, inna ma'al usri yusra. Every single difficulty also brings ease.
Dalil.
And I actually do believe in dalil. Can you believe that? Yeah. Can you believe I quote the Quran and Sunnah, right? I mean, like, subhanallah, yeah.
What sort of guest have we got on here?
I remember many years ago, just joking, many years ago, when we first started talking about Salafi, Sufi coming together, right? Imam Zayd Shakir said to me, this 15 years ago, or 14 years ago, is, let the Salafis come and mix with the Sufis. They'll see that we actually say Bismillah before we eat our food, We eat with the right hands. They're actually going to see we follow the Sunnah. It's just, that phrase just, when you said that, stuck with me. Like, okay. Because these stereotypes are just crazy. Anyway, what was your question before you so rudely interrupted?
In terms of Trump, right?
Yes, in terms of Trump. So there has indeed been a validation of many of our fears. We see this happening now. I cannot believe that America is thinking of attacking yet another Middle Eastern country. I mean, it's truly mind-boggling, even if I'm not a supporter of that country overall, still, to go to war and to kill innocent people and to spend lives. I mean, I can't help but worry about World War III around the horizon. Worry about,
I mean,
after all these years, we've spent over $6 trillion. We've lost in our American lives hundreds of thousands and non-Americans millions of lives, and we're still beating the drums of war. And if your guy gets elected, by the way, then he's also going to do what you're. I mean, it's going to be a vicious cycle and loop, and Allah musta'an. However, with that rise, we've also seen the rise of negatives. We've also seen the rise of some positives, and of them is that alhamdulillah, many Muslims have renewed their commitment to Islam. They've understood that this world they don't have the luxury of ignoring their Islamic identity, that they are more committed to the faith. They're becoming more involved in the masajid, in the communities, in political activism. And that's raised, obviously, a whole bunch of other interesting issues and concerns that if we have time, we'll talk about them. But overall, look, it's Allah's qadr which generation we're born in.
No.
It's Allah's qadr, what trials we face. And the way that I see it, this is our generation and our trials. This is what our, literally our jihad is going to be in fighting this Islamophobia, in reclaiming our true Islamic identity. This is our struggle. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. So you have a special...
You only just realized.
I think that was Sheikh's ringtone.
Okay. Our jihad with the small j, in the spiritual jihad, this is our spiritual jihad.
Bold font.
Yes, exactly. Italicized and So this is what I think our role in life is to make sure that we pass Islam down to our next generations and preserve our securities and freedoms in these lands.
I mean, when a community feels that it's under attack or in some kind of besieged status, then there's also a lot of pressure to reach out and conform to kind of maybe left-wing slash liberal kind of allies, right?
Yeah,
and that's something that we've seen a lot in not just in America, in the UK as well, slowly.
Yeah, we're experimenting the American Muslim community, and by and large, most activists are veering towards the left because the left gives them a home, and the left allows them to breathe, and the left basically says, we welcome you, in spite of your diversity or in spite of your weird views or whatnot. But of course, that comes at a compromise, and the compromise is they as well expect you to welcome them and their views. And we might be willing to tolerate politically, but we cannot tolerate morally. Meaning, and this is something that Muslims are going to have to come to terms with. Look, alhamdulillah, most Muslims do in the West. Look, obviously, the worlds that we live in, you cannot impose your version of morality on other people. You cannot go around mistreating people who might have a different view as you or a different lifestyle as you. And anybody who does that, frankly, they need to rethink about where they're living and why they're living here. It is not wajib to live in any one land over another. And if you feel that living in one land is such a compromise to your aqeedah and theology, then with my utmost respect, go live in another land, no problem. But if we understand that what is being asked of us is not acceptance but mere political toleration, I think that is a compromise that is acceptable in Islam. We can tolerate kufr in your life. We cannot tolerate it morally. There's a difference between the two. You understand this, obviously. Politically, it's lakum dinukum waliya din. It's the Meccan phase. You do what you're doing, but don't expect me to say that worshipping other than Allah is acceptable. You may worship other than Allah, and that is your freedom to do so in the lands that we're living in. Okay, but do not force me to say that I think it is permissible to worship other than Allah. Now, this is the issue that we're now grappling with now. To what level of quote-unquote compromise should we do? And of course, as you know, my position, I think is pretty clear that we are neither left nor right. We are neither, liberal or conservative. We have our own values. And I don't think it is correct to ally ourselves with any one strand against the other. But the problem is, at least in America, maybe in Europe it's different, we don't have enough critical mass to really form our own independent party. I think Muslims in France, Muslims maybe even in some places in England, do have that critical mass. And I think that they have more of a footing to stand on. But I think what the Europeans don't understand is that we are less than 1% of America.
Really?
Less than 1% of America. Very small. It sounds like a lot. It seems like a lot. That's because America has 350 million. So in the larger cities, when you have conventions of 20, 30,000 people, because again, where are the Muslims concentrated? In the larger cities.
So in the cities, they are concentrated.
In the larger cities, yes.
States, they are concentrated.
Yeah, I mean, in New York, Chicago, Houston, LA, New York is the highest percentage. Yeah. New York is, some say, up to like 5%, 10%. Okay, maybe, but New York, but that's an exception. You go to the average city or town, just like in England. If you go up an hour or two, how many Muslims will be living in those small villages or towns? So those percentages, or is it those? What is Leicester is number one, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Leicester or Birmingham, one of the two.
Somebody told me Leicester last year, mashallah.
Was it a Gujarati person that told you Leicester?
Yes, 40%. He said, I couldn't believe it. He said 40% of that city. Is like, what?
That's why I voted Brexit.
No, what they mean is probably 40% of it is owned by Muslims, mashallah. The Gujaratis and the Memons.
Mashallah. Okay. The point is, we don't have anywhere close to those percentages in some cities.
But do you have a vision to eventually for Muslims to do their own politics? Not necessarily in a party, but to
eventually,
have some kind of
once the critical mass comes, I think it is important because these are some of the challenging issues. What does it mean to be a Muslim in a liberal democracy? What does it mean to have enough critical mass to influence politicians and to get into politics? These are fatwa and issues where, again, with utmost respect, you can't go to Timbuktu. You will have to have local ulama, along with local academics, along with local MPs, along with local people who understand how it functions, come together in a room and put forth a vision. And that vision is never going to be 100% right. You will learn from experience. But again, you cannot outsource the future of Islam in Britain to Muslims in Timbuktu. And you understand I'm using Timbuktu as an example. In reality, it boils down to one country. So,
Pakistan,
what's Timbuktu done 21?
Zindabad.
I'm going to ask a slightly different line of questioning now, Sheikh, if that's all right with you. Alhamdulillah, we know Sheikh Yasir, and you've spoken about Sheikh Yasir as the academic and the scholar. And I'm going to use the next term, and I know this isn't something that you refer to yourself as to, but it's a celebrity, all right? And I know you don't refer to yourself as celebrity, but alhamdulillah, Allah has put love in the hearts of people for yourself. May Allah Azza wa Jal elevate you and accept from you on that. What do you do to kind of keep yourself measured? Because we've seen unbridled, unrestricted growth in the whole social media space. And alhamdulillah, you're coming from a position that's grounded in Islamic sciences, and you've gone through that, but other people don't have that. And we've seen kind of the worst of it. And so the question to yourself is, one is, how do you keep yourself measured? And two, what is the role of personal worship in people who are trying to become da'is and use social media as a platform?
this is a very painful question, because even as I answer it and explain the problems, I understand that I am one of the causes of those problems. It's a very difficult reality. All that I can say, subhanAllah, when people of my generation in the early 90s chose to study Islam, we can honestly say that there was no concept of celebrity scholars. So inshallah, anybody who went to study Islam in that time, inshallah, they were sincere for the sake of Allah, because we had to give up a lot. I gave up my engineering degree. I gave up a nice job. Allah knows how much I gave up. And I had no idea what the future would hold. Wallahi, as Allah is my witness, I never thought that I would be a person that is so much known in the Western world. There was no such thing. The people we looked up to were Siraj Wahaj and Jamal Badawi. You know what I'm saying? The concept of, even Hamza Yusuf came after we went to Medina, right? The concept of celebrity scholars did not even exist. So all that I can say is that, as Allah is our witness, we went for the sake of knowledge. We went to study Islam. We had no idea what the next step would come. And it just so happened that we came back, and we are the first batch, and in particular myself and a few others, who are the batches of the social media and the Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. This is not something we predicted. And we have seen, A'udhu Billah, but this culture of treating scholars like Hollywood and Bollywood stars. And it really hurts me, because that's not why we did what we did. Now, the flip side, and I'm sure the Sheikh won't mind me mentioning his name, my dear friend, I'll mention his name because I know he won't mind, Sheikh Yahya Ibrahim from Australia/Canada. We did Umrah together, and a family came up to me with, the eyes of shock, and was like, Sheikh, I want to do a selfie with you. And I said, may Allah bless you. I don't want to take selfies. May Allah bless you. Jazakallah khair. Family went away. Sheikh Yahya turned to me and said, Ya Aba Ammar, taqillah. It's like, what? I don't want to take selfies. Said, may Allah reward you. I know your niyyah is good, but don't you understand that they're coming to you, and of course they've put you in a pedestal you don't deserve. We both know that. But in their eyes, they want to respect Islam and the people of Islam. In their eyes, isn't it better that they take you like this rather than, what are the latest stars of your country, Bollywood or something? What are
my country?
Salman Bhatt.
Omar Isa.
So rather than these other people, isn't it better that they come to you? Their children are saying they're gonna. He said this to me. He's like, as soon as they take the photo, if they took it, they would text it back to the family. We got a picture with, and then they're gonna go listen to your lecture. So it's a two-way street. And what hurts me, number one, Allah knows I don't like this culture. As Allah is my witness, I don't like it. I don't like it. I really don't. And that's why I posted on Facebook multiple times, please don't take selfies. I'll make dua for you. I only, by the way, do autographs for little kids. If you're like 7 years old, you want an autograph, okay, Tiga, no problem. But if you're like a, you know,
I was gonna bring my copy of Kashf for Shubuhat for you to sign.
If you're gonna,
no, for another reason.
I have a lot to say about that. I can sign it, but I also have to delete many things that expunge. If you have a marker, we can go over it, inshallah. The point is that that's one side that I don't like it. But then the people, Allah musta'an, it's a type of veneration that there's some khair in it and there's some shar in it. Let's be brutally honest here. There's some khair that we want them to look up to the people of Islam in a positive manner. Allah knows I don't deserve that respect. I know it. But what do? The second thing that comes, which is also painful, is that, subhanAllah, we get criticized from another generation of du'at and whatnot, that they feel that we have corrupted the purity of the da'wah. And I don't know what to do about that. I don't want to corrupt the purity of the da'wah. What do? I don't know. Please, I genuinely am asking, should we stop giving da'wah on Facebook? Should we stop deactivate YouTube? Yani not giving seerah classes anymore? That's what I want to give all of this ilm out. What should we do? What is the so we also become targets for another generation of, right after us, who just feel as if, oh, these are the celebrity scholars. And that dismissiveness, of course it hurts. I'm human being in the end of the day. I don't know what to do. There's a third problem that has come, which is the most dangerous. And I have seen this myself with my own eyes. And this is, wallahi, something I'm speaking directly to the people and the students of knowledge. I have seen and heard people say, when they go to Medina or whatnot, I want to become the next Yasir Qadhi, or I want to become the next Sheikh Fulan and Allan, right? And this is terrifying. Wallahi, it's terrifying. Whatever my faults were, whatever our faults were of that generation, fame was not one of them.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as a famous sheikh or a da'i at that time. It's a different world. For somebody to go into Islamic studies for the sake of fame, a'udhu billah, man, you have sold your deen and your dunya.
Weren't you a bit flattered though? Just a bit.
Dang, this guy is like cruel. Completely cruel.
Like,
you know the word tappar in Urdu?
Huh? It's tappar actually.
Okay, so sometimes some people deserve tappars. See, I mean, completely lost my train of thought. Where was I?
Just imagining giving him a tappar.
That's therapeutic.
But yeah, they were seeking fame, you're saying.
There are people wanting to study Islam for the sake of fame. The issue, therefore, of purity of intention is essential for the one who goes to study Islam. You will destroy your deen and dunya if you go for the wrong reasons. Wallahi, if you want to go for fame, don't go to Islamic studies. Become a doctor. You will become famous. You're going to go to the high court and take your own country to court because they're going to challenge you on your passwords. Right?
Infamous. If you're handsome.
Yes. Okay. Pretty. That's the word you use for yourself. So I'm just going back to that.
No, to
no problem to be famous in the dunya.
For the sake of, what about if he's saying, I want to be the next Yasir Qadhi so I can teach Islam to many people?
Impact.
So your actual aim, the maqsad, the end goal
MashaAllah, I like his husn al-dhan that he wants to find the proper. Okay, alhamdulillah. If that, then I would say aim higher.
Yeah.
Why are you making
more famous?
You want to be the next Omar Suleiman?
MashaAllah.
By the way, tell him he owes me royalties for using the name.
But I mean, a lot of young du'at now, they're coming back from Medina, Azhar, these universities, and they genuinely feel that you have to build a social media profile. And
I have spoken to du'at, to students of Medina, and I have said it is a mistake of the highest magnitude to get involved in social media when you're still a minor talib al-ilm. Yeah. You need to study and study and study. You need to read, go to halaqat and durus. Now is not the time to do anything other than study. Absorb what you have. Of course, with the caveat that don't make that the final and end all. I've already said this, that's a version of Islam, and come back and broaden your horizons. But you still have to go through that version. You wouldn't be effective if you're already thinking about social media and you're a first year student in Sharia. It doesn't work that way.
You'd be much less likely to progress yourself, because if you publish something out there, it's much harder to then, when you maybe mature in your view, it's very hard to go back and delete those sections from.
So look at the people that have look at academia in the Western world. You don't start publishing papers in the first year. You start publishing papers in your PhD level. You go through years and years of study. You don't start that early on. So definitely people should not even have a Facebook account to give da'wah when they're still in a first year stage. We've seen the disaster of do-it-yourself du'at, especially here in this part of the world, right?
Yeah.
People get a little bit of knowledge and then that's it. They just start.
It's okay, he's learned his lesson.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Won't do it again.
LinkedIn's my media profile now, bro.
Yeah, he's a bit up there. He's not. He doesn't.
MashaAllah.
He's
No,
LinkedIn.
no.
A little bit of knowledge
Yeah.
is a very dangerous thing.
It's true. You've been consistent in that message, Sheikh, I have to say, alhamdulillah, over the last few years. Definitely. But in terms of...
Why are you
Okay.
saying it like that?
No, alhamdulillah.
That's the thing you've been consistent in.
Well, yeah, no, Sheikh's always, I think, I've got to say, I mean, I used to go to Sheikh's classes back in the day, and he's always said that the more the more you've studied, the more you realize how little you've known. And that's good, it's alhamdulillah. And spending time with you in private, I can say, alhamdulillah, the consistency. Unfortunately, we spend time with some people, and there's a difference between private and public life. But alhamdulillah, may Allah Azza wa Jalla allow you to bring life to your words. But the other point is about personal worship, Sheikh. Even for the one who is studying, has the knowledge, and now he's been put on a platform, whether he desired it or not, he's been put on a platform. What sort of tools can that person use to then really keep themselves in check?
A number of things. First and foremost, obviously, every single person, without exception, and especially those that are in the public life, they need to have an extra dose of personal dhikr and Quran and worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They need to have private good deeds that no one knows about other than Allah. This is essential for every single person, and especially for those that have been put on a pedestal. Also, of the things that need to be done is lots of dua for ikhlas, lots of dua. You know, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq asked the Prophet ﷺ about showing off. Think about that. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, what dua should I make? And this is one of the few hadith that is in Bukhari that is narrated by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and the Prophet ﷺ. Beautiful, right? About the cleansing of riyah from the heart, right? Oh Allah, forgive the shirk that I know and I seek refuge from the shirk that I don't know. This is the cleansing of the heart. That's the second thing. Ask Allah for qalbin salim. Ask Allah for pure heart. The third thing is to surround yourself with a group of peers and friends and family who have known you from before, and they'll put you in check. They'll put you in check.
Nothing like the
They'll do your bestie, basically.
Nothing like the missus. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for having blessed me with my life partner who always puts me in check. I say this many times. She is my Khadija. She is somebody who has always put me in check, and obviously she's my number one critic more than my number one fan, which is very important to put me in check, because she knew me before even I went to Medina. Right, so to see somebody like that, and now she can see now what has happened and whatnot, so she always, alhamdulillah, whenever there's reason for criticism, which is very common for some reason amongst the, you know, so okay, she'll be very frank, and alhamdulillah. So this is, and also, you know, friends, I have friends from back in the day before I went to Medina even, and in the Medina phase, I still have friends when I was an undergraduate. Some of them are your teachers now, alhamdulillah. So, you know, it's nice to be in touch with them, and they also contextualize and keep you in check. These are the three things that I can suggest, inshallah.
Good advice. I'm conscious of time because you have to shoot off for your lecture. Just briefly, what are you going to be talking about today at the Men Conference?
The talk will center. It's going to be titled in quotes, "We don't do God." Do you remember that quote?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right. Alistair Campbell said this to Tony Blair.
Right? I knew that.
The guy you shook hands with.
Yeah, well, the guy I took a class with.
Yeah.
Yes, my sheikh, according to. What was that noise again?
That was a
Hadouken!
Hadouken.
From an arcade game, Sheikh.
He's pretending like he doesn't know. You know the yoga flames.
No, I have no idea
Sonic
what the
booms?
yoga flames are. No idea.
Astaghfirullah.
I think you're a different generation than me. I think you're younger than me. Yeah. You
Alhamdulillah.
know, I grew up playing Atari, actual Atari.
Yeah.
That's a
Mashallah.
totally different. How old are you? 27? Like what?
Yes. Yeah, just about.
In some circles.
Bro, I go back. Okay, so
Yeah,
yes, the
alhamdulillah.
original Atari, Yours Revenge, these
Mashallah.
classic games.
Tetris as well, yeah.
Tetris is like
Tetris
that.
is new. I mean.
Exactly.
He played it with
Tetris
blocks
is
in
my
real
favorite.
life.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. What was the question again? So the talk is about balancing
It's
between
about,
faith and politics, basically. Like,
okay.
you know, how to be a faithful Muslim in the political realm, and balancing activism with our theology and methodology. Again, to what level of quote unquote compromise, or is there no compromise? I mean, these are some of the things I'll be raising today, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair. And just a very last question, Sheikh. You've now left, and I think left sounds like quite a strong word, Al-Maghrib, because you're working with the
Islamic Seminary of America.
Yeah. What does the Islamic Seminary of America do? It'd be good to let
The Islamic Seminary of America, this is this is realizing a dream of mine for the last 15 years. You've heard about this from my own mouth many, many years ago. I've always wanted to be a part of an institute of higher education, essentially a Western seminary, where we bring together some of these issues I'm talking about, which is the classical tradition along with modern, contemporary issues, and merge them together in a syllabus, the likes of which does not exist anywhere in the Muslim world. And this has been my vision, alhamdulillah, for the last 15 years. And first I thought maybe through the institute I was with we can do that, but qaddar Allah, and I have nothing but love and respect for the institute I was a part of, and they're all my friends still, and there's no, and some people are thinking what are the politics behind it. No, there's nothing, absolutely nothing. It's just a different phase of my life now. We need to now move on. They have a role to play and I wish them all the best, but I am now moving on to a different phase where we're founding an actual institute, a physical institute based in Dallas, Texas, where people can come and study for master's level accredited programs, get a master's in theology, master's in divinity. We have a number of tracks, one of them being Islamic studies. There's also counseling, there's also nonprofit management. These are the three main tracks that we have.
Good.
So I'm obviously the more interested in the Islamic studies one. And the goal really is that we're starting with a master's. Inshallah, 10, 15 years, we'll have bachelor's and PhD. We're starting with the master's level. The goal really is that people get a good understanding of the classical tradition along with some of the issues being raised in modernity. I'll give you an example. The first class I'm teaching is going to be the sciences of the Quran, ulum al-Quran. Now, for this class, we're not just going to study the traditional sciences. For example, my book that I wrote 23 years ago, which is the standard book of, let's say, the standard topics, let's say, ulum al-Quran, asbab al-nuzul, tafsir, this and that. It's not just that. We're also going to then bring in, what are some of the issues that come with the preservation of the Quran? What are some of these contemporary academics talking about when they talk about manuscripts, the Sana'a manuscript, right? The Sana'a palimpsest, this new discovery. What are the theories that people have about, maybe even Burton's theory, or Wansborough has this really bizarre, Luxembourg, another name. People have no clue that there's some serious arguments that are being raised that seem to have some solid evidence behind them. And the first time Muslims ever hear them, they're very confused because there are some very interesting ideas that seem to have basis upon them, right? So how can we then approach this? Also the issue of sources, the issue of methodology, the issue of overlap between certain stories in the Quran that seem to reflect Greco-Roman mythologies. Most Muslims are not aware of those. In this class we'll discuss them. Because the argument that is being done is that astaghfirullah, the Prophet got these stories from these Greco-Roman mythologies. And they'll show them that, look, in the year 500 this was a common myth. The Qarnayn being the most obvious one, right? And they will prove it, that this is a common myth, and then we find it in the Quran and whatnot. How do you respond to this thing? These are questions that you'll never hear about in most seminaries in the Eastern world, because they've never read the very people that are writing about this, right? More importantly is methodology than the specifics. More importantly, we need to teach our students how to think.
Because stuff like that, hasn't that been an ancient kind of criticism?
Of course it has been, but to connect the dots. You can't just say, the Quran says Asatir al-Awwalin. How do you then demonstrate that? I don't want to get too detailed, because again the problem comes when you give the shubuhat out and then you don't respond to it. So let me just say there are some serious issues that are raised that will require us to pause and rethink through some of these simplistic answers that we just gave, and we were satisfactory to the average person. They're not going to be satisfactory to the academic, any Muslim academic, because the Muslim academic will see through your simplistic response as being a cop-out, and many times it is. So we need to teach our students to be ready to take on these challenges in the modern world.
Does this mean that you're not going to be doing any structured courses in the UK anymore? Or is it only through the seminary, or can we hope that you'll come and teach here?
There's no immediate plan to give structured courses traveling. That's the Maghrib model. And it was very tiring for me, very tiring. I'm one person, I can't travel to 50 cities continuously. It's just too much. I'm also, believe it or not, I am getting older. I know you wouldn't think that, but this white hair here, it's like so I cannot continue to travel and teach these intensive weekend seminars. I need to now settle down and have people come and do this. Of course, the seminary is going to start off with a hybrid model of online and on-site.
Yeah.
Which means some classes will be online, then you have to fly in for weekend sessions on-site. Because we understand that in the beginning, you can't just expect students to come full-time. But within a few years, we hope to have the actual campus. In the meantime, yes, indeed, allow me for a free plug, you can take the class online.
Good.
You know, it's going to be possible to take it online. But if you want credit for it, you will have to fly in for 2 weekends every semester. So every 5 months, 2 weekends, you have to come in and physically attend so that we have the one-on-one as well.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay. Yeah. So we've lost track of time. Alhamdulillah, hope you enjoyed the conversation. Hope you joined watching, dear brothers and sisters at home. For more information, we'll put some links in the description, inshallah. Jazakallah khair again for Sheikh Yasir for joining us. And I've been one of your hosts, Salman Umar.
And Umar Suleiman. Jazakumullah khair.
If you like the podcast, give it a like and a share. If you didn't like it, then
write a PDF.
Write a PDF again.
Put the views on Sheikh Yasir's page.
Yeah. We'll give you his email address.
He's used to it. He's used to the criticism.
Very used to it. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, we have very fragile egos. So. Jazakumullah khairan, and see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Unscripted.